Hey guys, we're going to talk about equivalent fractions, mixed numbers. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so equivalent fractions, mixed numbers. You've done this before. It's not new. Um, if we have a fraction like 1/4 and we want to find an equivalent fraction to 1/4, there are two ways to make equivalent fractions. One way always works. The second way will work if it's a fraction that can be simplified. So, first of all, if we look at this fraction, we can always take the numerator, top number, and the bottom denominator and multiply them by the same number to create an equivalent fraction. So, if I take 1/4 and I multiply both the top numerator and the bottom denominator by 2, I get 2/8. These are equivalent fractions. Now, the way you can always check to see if fractions are equivalent is if you cross multiply. So watch, I'm going to come over here and show you two things. One is to make an equivalent fraction. The second thing is, how do I check if fractions are equivalent if I'm not sure? So I can take 8 times 1, go from bottom to top, which is 8, and 4 times 2, bottom to top, which is 8, and these numbers are the same, the fractions are equal. If one is bigger than the other, you know which fraction is bigger. So let me show you another example of making an equivalent fraction, and also another example of how to check to see if fractions are, to determine if they're equivalent. Okay, so if we have if we have 3/5, I can multiply it times 2, I can multiply it times 10, whatever I choose to multiply it by, it'll always be equivalent. I'm just going to pick 10. As long as I do to the top what I do to the bottom, I have an equivalent fraction. 30 out of 50 pieces of candy is equivalent to 3 out of 5 pieces of candy, proportionally. Okay? To check it, if I wanted to check, if I was given this number and I was given that fraction and this fraction, and I want to check them, I could cross multiply. 3 times 50, 150. 5 times 30, 150. They're equal. So two things you're learning: how to check to see if fractions are equivalent. You can just cross multiply. And how to make an equivalent fraction. Now, there's another way to make an equivalent fraction. I can take a fraction. I'm just going to take this one, 30 over 50. And before we said we can multiply the numerator and denominator by any number, and it would make an equivalent fraction. The same thing is true if the numerator and denominator have a common factor. Okay, we did the GCF, right? They have a greater common factor or any common factor between them, we can simplify it and make an equivalent fraction. So they both end in 10. So we know we can divide by 10, top and bottom. 10 goes into, excuse me, it's going glitchy on me. 10 goes into 30 3 times, and 10 goes into 50 5 times. But let's say we had, those are equivalent then. So let's do 30 over 50 again. And somebody might say, well, I know 5 can go into both of them. Well, let's divide by 5. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 5 goes into 50 10 times. 6 over 10 is equal to 3 over 5, which is also equal to 30 over 50. They're all equivalent fractions. It's just that 3 over 5 is the simplest form of it. It's broken down as far as it'll go. 3 is prime, 5 is prime. I can't go any further down. Whereas 6 over 10, I could continue to break it down to 3 over 5. I could divide top by 2, which would be 3, and bottom by 2, which would be 5. So all these are equivalent to each other. They're just different forms of the same fraction. Okay, so you can make an equivalent fraction by, again, multiplying the numerator and denominator by any number. Okay, this one I did 10, this one I did 2, I could have picked 3 and 3, 5 and 5, whatever is easiest. Or I can find an equivalent fraction by dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same number that'll equally go into them. So we've came up with 6 over 10, 3 over 5, all those equal 30 over 50. Okay, so equivalent fractions. And now we'll talk a little bit about mixed numbers. Okay, so if, let me go ahead and erase up here, and I'll rewrite some different things for you. If I want to know, if I want to take a fraction, hang on one second. If I'm asked to write fractions with common denominators, okay, which is another part of what you're going to be doing with the equivalent fractions, I like to use the the X method to check for whether they're equivalent or not. But you can also make equivalent fractions by finding common denominators. Let me show you. Well, okay. So 2 over 3 and 6 over 9. If you're asked to determine if they're equivalent, remember you can always multiply. We'll just go ahead and do that, so we'll see. 2 times 9 is 18, and 3 times 6 is 18. To me, that's the easiest way. But you can also make common denominators. Since this is 9, I can see what do I multiply to get to 9 over here. So that might work, right? So if I multiplied 2/3 by 3, top, whatever do the bottom, I have to do the top, I end up with 6/9, which is equivalent, right? So I know it's equal because I just made an equivalent fraction from it. So either way, you can create common denominators, or you can do the cross method and multiply them to see which one's greater than, which one's less than, or if they're equal. Okay? Let's do one more. Let's take 1/4, because this will be kind of an example. We know half of a cake is bigger than a fourth. But let's say it was fractions you didn't know for sure which one was bigger or not. Cross multiply. 2 times 1 is 2. Cross multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. Whichever number is bigger over here is the bigger fraction. So 1/2 obviously is greater than 1/4. So you know they're not equivalent, and you know which one's greater. That's why I like the cross multiplication method. Okay? All right. So I'm going to do one more video for you that's talking about converting a mixed number into an improper fraction into a mixed number, because that's something you've done and you should know how to do, but you may have forgotten. So I will also do a video on that for you guys.